Okay, good day, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Um, Welcome to today's lesson, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to look at two types of processing systems. We're going to look at batch processing system, and also we are going. The next processing system that we'll be discussing is interactive processing system or transaction processing system. Okay, so we are going to look at the difference between these two processing systems. Okay, because when it comes to data processing, it's actually done or processed in different ways. You can either processing it in batch or just right on the spot immediately after uh, the certain data is received. Okay, so now in this lesson, these are the two types of processing systems that we're going to look at or that you're going to discuss. Okay, so we'll be looking at the difference between the two processing systems, and then we also look at advantages and disadvantages of each of these two systems. Remember, in anything that is in any choice that you are actually going for, definitely you'll find advantages and disadvantages. So it's better to look at advantages and disadvantages of each and every action or decision that you're taking. When, let's say, for instance, when you're choosing any of these processing systems. Okay, so we'll be looking at the advantages and disadvantages of these two processing systems, and then we'll also look at some examples of like a real life situation of these two types of processing systems. Um, okay, and then we just end our lesson there. So it's going to be a very, not a lengthy lesson, by the way. Okay, now starting off with batch processing system. So we're saying batch processing system is a technique of processing data that occur in one large group instead of individual. So with batch processing system, as we are saying here, it's a technique of processing data in one large group. So you have got bunch of data, okay? And then this data, you have to process them as one unit, okay? Rather than processing it individually, like portion by portion, okay? So this is why we say it's a technique of processing that data that occur in one large group instead of individually. So here you have got a large, as I've said, large group of data or a large bunch of info, a bunch of data, and then this data is being processed once, like at once, but not individually. Okay. So it is a batch processing system. It's actually done to help conserve system resources and allow for any modification before being processed. Okay, so it allows what? The systems, so it conserves system resources, okay? Because it's not always that the system, the resources of the system are being used, because sometimes they just idle, okay? Because there's no processing being done, okay? Because the system has to wait for different for batches. I mean, as we say that this process, the processing it's done in batches, right? So sometimes when a certain batch are not received, the system is idle and then no resources are being used. So by so doing, resources can be conserved. Okay, and then this system would also allows modification before data being processed, okay? Because the data is being done in portions or in batches. So what you can do is you can allow modification. Let's say a certain batch, you need to change something. So you can do that, it allows that. It allows you to make some changes because before you do the processing. Okay, so we say it does what? It helps conserve system resources, and it also allows for modification being processed. Okay, so the transactions are piled up. The transactions are piled up in a stack of documents and are entered into a computer system in a batch. Okay, so your transactions are piled up. Okay, it's like you are saving them, like, and then it becomes like a stack of documents. You know, when you're putting books, like you pile books up. So that's basically how this batch process systems. So all these documents or these the transactions are piling up, okay, and are entered into the computer system into batches. So they come into batches, like one by one. They are being processed in the they come. You have got a stack, like a bunch of documents. So first you just pile them up first, and then you just process it once. Okay, so we're saying and are entered into the system in a batch. Okay. For example, batch will, for example, banks will batch process all their documents once every hour instead of processing each transactions immediately. Okay. So what this sentence saying is that when you go to the banks, when you look at the banks, the way they process their transactions, it's like they collect all the transactions, and then they process this once everything, or let's say after an hour. So they don't process it immediately after receiving them. They collect all these transactions and then they process it once. Like let's say if they've been collecting all the transaction from the morning up to the after lunch until lunchtime, and then from lunchtime they add up all these transactions and then they are being processed at once. Okay, rather than just processing them individually immediately after a user have entered some details. Okay, so a batch system, a batch job can be completed, sorry, without the user intervention. Okay, so this is just a system that are pre-designed. Okay, so you want but during the batch system, it doesn't need your interaction or your intervention. Sorry. So so the system is designed such a way that it receives batches, it piles them up, and then it processes once at the end. Okay, so you don't need doesn't need user intervention. Okay, so for example, let's consider a telephone billing application that records phone call records from the enterprise information system and generate a monthly bill. Okay, let's say you are owning an organization, and this organization you have got your telephones. So what you do is you receive and you call other organizations. Let's say you want to do procurement, or you're finding out about a certain thing from a certain organization. So what you do is all this bill, like because telecom, for instance, Telecom Namibia have given you this. We went to Telecom and then you ask them to come in and install or have this telephone in your offices. Okay. So at the end of the day, once you are done with all your calls, the one that you receive, and the outgoing calls. Okay, so telecom doesn't necessarily it doesn't charge you right after each and every call. Okay, so what they do is they bill you up. Okay, so they just take all your calls that you made, like maybe the whole week is 1 week, they add it to the other week until they make up the whole month, and then they give you like your bill. Okay, so they collect all these different uh, calls that you did, and then they bill you according to that. Maybe on Monday you took maybe 10 minutes to talk to that person, and then on Tuesday you took maybe 5 minutes. Friday you took an hour, and then the other week the same. So it goes like that. So it puts all this time that you took to make this call, and then at the end of the month it gives you like your total, and then the charges that is assigned or that's equivalent to what you have um, uh, taken to make all your calls. Okay. So moving on, let's move on, guys. So an example of batch processing system is the way that credit card companies process billing. Okay, so these are some of the examples that are actually explaining what batch processing system is. Okay, so the credit companies are processing, they process your bills. So I mean, we are saying the companies, the credit companies are sort of examples of processing a batch processing system. So the customer does not receive what? It does not receive a bill for each separate credit card purchase, but one monthly bill for all of that monthly purchases. Okay, so you guys remember, I know some of you are having credit cards at different stores where you go and use your credit card to buy items at certain stores. Okay, so what you do is you go and buy a cloth or whatever you're buying, and then your credit is credited, okay, onto your account. So what the store does, it collects all these items that you purchase through the month, okay, and then they give you the bill at the end of the month, like this is what you need to pay. So it collects all this, it comes into batches, okay. Okay, so this is what I just said. So the bill is created through batch processing, where all the data are collected and held until the bill is processed as a batch at the end of the billing cycle. Okay, so all the batches are collected. I mean, what is it? The information or your bill is collected. Whatever you're buying or whatever you're taking, it's saved or it's collected, and then it's processed at the end of the month. Okay, so once the cycle is complete. Okay, so let's move on to examples. Let's look at a few examples here for batch processing systems. So the first one, let's look at the payroll system. So the batch systems are ideal for making payrolls. The salaries of employees can be printed at the end of the month by the batch system. So the statements can be made easy by using batches. Okay. So here we're talking about the payroll system, that system that pays people at the end of the month. Okay. So we're saying the salaries of employees can be printed at the end of the month by the batches system. So the statement can be made easy by using batches. Okay. So what you do is the company does is maybe collects the dates that you've been present at your workplace, and then it calculates your salaries according to that. Okay. So they don't pay you like every day. Okay, they don't pay you every day, like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So they collect all these days together, and they pile them up. They save, they keep them safe somewhere, and then at the end of the month, they calculate your salary based on that. Okay, like maybe if you take, for instance, an overtime. Sorry, please. If you take an example of overtime, okay, so you take all your overtime days, and then you add them up, and then they're being processed in that way as well. Okay. Going on, let's look at the bank statement. Sorry, me, please. Bank statement at the end of the month, we know what a bank statement is, people. So at the end of the month, the bank makes statement for each account holder. So these bank statements can be made easily by batches systems at the end of the month. Okay. So those are the two examples of batch processing system that I've come across. We have got so many of them out there, but I just decided to look at these ones because they're more, we use them like daily in the daily life. Okay, and then let's look at the advantages now of this system. What are the good system about batch? What are the good things about the batch processing system? So we're saying the repeated job, the first one here. Repeated jobs are done fast in batch systems without interaction. Okay, remember we said this data is collected and it's put into the system. So the repeated jobs are done fast in batch systems without user interaction. Okay, so there's no user interaction here or intervention is needed. So everything is done automatically. Okay, so what is the system does? It collects this information or this data, and then it stores them. Then it processes them according to how it's designed, like maybe at the end of the week or at the end of the month or at the end of the day. So it doesn't need your intervention. It does this automatically, and it's done very fast since that everything is in place. So the second point there, it's the idle time batch system is very less. Okay, so now since that these batches are collected, or this data is collected and processed at once. So what it does is, as this for the process, I mean the system, it's collecting. So it's idle. It's not doing anything. Okay, so it's not like doing. It's not processing data that period of time. Okay, so it's just idle, and then a lot of things will be saved when the system is still idle. Okay, as we said there earlier, that it conserves resources. Okay, so this is also part of it, or an example, or one good thing about batch processing system. So it's not always that the system is running. Sometimes it's idle. I mean, while the batches are being collected or this data is being collected, for them to be processed at once at end of defined period of time, maybe after a day or after a week or after a month. Okay. The next one is you don't need special what? You don't need special hardware and system support to input data in batch systems. So you don't need some certain or special hardware and system support to input data in batch system. Okay, so those are some of the advantages of batch processing system. Now let's look at the disadvantage now. Okay, so it's difficult to debug the batch systems. So it's so difficult to debug these systems. And then the batch systems are sometimes costly. Okay, sometimes they're costly. You need more cash for you to implement these systems. The next one is if some jobs takes too much time. For instance, if error occurs in job, then other jobs will wait when unknown time. Okay, so if the first job is being processed, have got some errors. Okay, so it will also delays the other jobs that were queued, that were standing in the line. Okay, and with unknown time, so it actually disturbs the processing, the whole processing process. Okay, because these have to wait for an unknown time because they don't know for how long should they wait in the queue for them to be processed. So that's actually one of the disadvantages. Now, looking at the second processing system, which is now the interactive. So the interactive processing system is opposite. It's opposite of batch processing system. Okay. So because remember we said the batch processing system is the system collects it in batches. Right? It processes data in batches. Okay. Like it collects everything and then it processes them once as a group. Okay. But now when it comes to interactive processing systems, it does the opposite. Okay. So it doesn't have to wait for the whole month for it to process the data. It doesn't have to wait for the whole week. It doesn't have to wait for the whole day. Okay. It doesn't have to wait for a certain hour. Okay. It just processes it right on the spot. Okay, so that's actually interactive processing system. So the interactive processing or transaction processing, it's an automated way to enter and process data or reports continuously as the source demands are available. Okay, so it's an automated way. of entering data to be processed. Okay, and it's done right way, right on the spot. A good example of interactive processing system is a barcode scanning. A barcode scanning. I know you guys have been to the supermarkets. You bought something, some items or some groceries, or at some certain stores, and you have seen this system, the barcode scanning, where you come at the teller, and then the cashier, the person that's helping you, the cashier there, is scanned or she scanned the barcode of your item, and that is processed right on the spot. Okay, so what the system does is it goes to the database, and then it updates or it gives like a notification that this item is no more in our stock, somebody bought it. Okay, so it happens right after that, I mean right on the spot. Okay, so it says here, when you buy a shirt at a certain store, the barcodes get scanned at the registrar. The t-shirts, this shirt is immediately updated in Target's inventory system as being sold. This is what I've said earlier. Okay, so the system of the database of this store, it's updated that this system, this item is no more in our stock. Okay, somebody took it, somebody bought it. Okay, so it updates and the market as sold. Okay, so it is also updated in the cost and sales reports. Okay, so it actually updates into our database depending on what fields does the database have. Okay, so it updates what the reports. It updates in the report and the cost tables, for instance. Okay, that the price for this was that, and the item was sold. So the interactive processing system continuously updates the entire accounting system. Okay, so it keeps on updating. It doesn't have to wait for the whole day to end. It doesn't have to wait for the whole week. It updates it, the system right on the spot. So that's actually the the interactive processing system. So the interactive processing system updates continuously. Okay, managers can run an inventory report any day at any time and have accurate, up-to-date information. Okay, so managers does not have to wait for the whole day to end, or they don't have to wait for the whole week. They don't have to wait for the whole month. They don't have to wait for the whole year. Okay, so they can run this inventory report any day and update and have an accurate information or update information about the system or about the whole stock. Okay, like what was sold today or at this time, and so forth and so on. Okay. The interactive processing system is just like live processing data. Live processing, in that case, if a user inputs some data by filling input form or any site when it is get processed, and data fetch from the database online at the same time. I think this is just well understood, as it would have already said earlier. Okay, that the process is done right on the spot. You don't have to wait for it. Okay, like if you're buying something and you are using your ATM cards, when you come at ShopRite or maybe Pick n Pay, and you're swiping, you're using your card, your ATM card to pay. Okay, so the system doesn't have to wait for like 2 days for this to be approved. You don't stand at the teller for 2 days. Okay, so it's approved right on the spot, because that's where you get your item, because everything is processed. Okay, I think you guys have seen this in different supermarkets, or when you're buying something like using your ATM cards to pay. Okay, so everything is just approved right on the spot there. Okay, so this doesn't have to be collected in batches, and yeah. Okay, now let's look at the advantages of this system, of the interactive system. So it's easy to do shopping online, very, very easy, guys. So it allows you also to do shopping online, and it's very easy. because I know some of us have done the online shopping. Okay, so what you do is just go to your the site where you want to buy your item, and then you put in the right information and everything is processed, and then you receive your item in maybe in a day or something. Okay, but the whole process doesn't take it's very easy. Okay, it also have got quick response. So with batch process, I mean interactive processing system, it have a quick response time. What does that mean? Like, it means you don't, it's simple, guys. It's very, very straightforward. Okay, so you don't have to wait for a couple of times, a couple of days for your request to be processed. Okay, so it's just so quick. It happens in a blink of an eye. Okay, the third one is it easy to use. I think this is what I've said in the first one bullet there. It's easy to use, just form filling, and your job get processed automatically by web and database servers. Okay, this is what I've said. It's so similar to the first one. Online banks nowadays use online processing system for money transactions. Okay, so if you are sending money to someone through the bank, this doesn't take a lot of time. And the banks nowadays, the banks are using the online processing system. Okay, so if someone is in it's abroad and wants to send you money, you receive this money right on the spot. Okay, because this system it actually process everything right on the spot. Okay, so that is one of those are some of the advantages of batch, not batch, but interactive processing system. Now let's look at the disadvantages now. There occurs millions of requests at a time, which is difficult to handle. Okay, so if your system is receiving millions of requests, like each and everyone wants things to be processed. Okay, so like you flood the system with requests. Okay, and then it becomes so difficult for the system to handle. Okay, because with interactive processing system, everything is done right on the spot. Okay, so everyone is just like flooding. It's like requesting the system to process his or her own request. Okay, and this actually gives problems to the systems. Now, during purchases, if servers hang out for a few seconds, then transactions get interrupted. So not good for big website and organization and high traffic sites. Okay. So now, if you have flooded these servers or this database with so many requests, okay, sometimes the servers hang out for a few seconds. Okay, and then if this happens, it also affects the transactions because it times out. Okay, so it times out, and then this transaction will be interrupted. So meaning you have to start all over again. Okay, so that is one of the bad thing about batch processing. I mean, interactive processing system. Okay, if any hardware failure occurs in online processing system, then visitors of website get in trouble and online transaction gets stopped and affected. This is so straightforward. Okay, so if your transaction it's interrupted or it's stopped halfway, so it means you have to go and start all over. And this is maybe due to the hardware failures while you're doing your online transactions. Okay, right. So this is the end of our lesson. I hope you go through this recording over and over until you understand the difference between these two processing systems. Okay, having said that, let's just end here for today and see you sometimes. Bye for now.